Hello, my beautiful babies. Welcome to the Little Wonder Stories.
Hello, Little Wonder family. I hope you all are doing awesome. I'm back with a new interesting story just for my tiny friends. So let's dive into this.
Part 2 of story, Mushkil Gusha. And then the voice told the woodcutter to close his eyes and to mount, as it were, a step. But I do not see any step, said the man. Never mind. Do as I say, said the voice. The man did as he was told. As soon as he had closed his eyes, he found that he was standing up, and as he raised his right foot, he felt that there was something like a step under it. He started to ascend what seemed to be a staircase. Suddenly, the whole flight of steps started to move, very fast, and the voice said, "Do not open your eyes until I tell you to do so." In a very short time, the voice told the man to open his eyes. When he did, he found that he was in a place that looked rather like a desert, with the sun beating down on him. He was surrounded by masses and masses of pebbles of all colors, red, green, blue, and white. But he seemed to be alone. He looked all around him and could not see anyone. But the voice started to speak again. "Take up as many of these stones as you can," said the voice. "Then close your eyes and walk down the steps once more." The woodcutter did as he was told, and he found himself, when he opened his eyes again at the voice's bidding, standing before the door of his own house. He knocked at the door, and his little daughter answered it. She asked him where he had been, and he told her, but it all sounded so confusing that she could hardly understand what he was saying. They went into the house, and the little girl and her father shared the last food they had, which was a handful of dried dates. When they had finished, the man thought that he heard the voice speaking to him again. The voice said, "Although you may not know it yet, you have been saved by Mushkil Gusha. Remember that Mushkil Gusha is always here. Make sure that every Thursday night, you eat some dates and give some to any needy person, and tell the story of Mushkil Gusha, the remover of all difficulties. Or give a gift in the name of Mushkil Gusha to someone who will help the needy. Make sure that the story of Mushkil Gusha is never forgotten. If you do this, and if this is done by those to whom you tell the story, the people who are in real need will always find their way." The woodcutter put all the stones that he had brought back from the desert in a corner of his little house. They looked very much like ordinary stones, and he did not know what to do with them. The next day, he took his 2 enormous bundles of wood to the market and sold them easily for a high price. When he got home, he showed his daughter all sorts of delicious kinds of food that she had never tasted before. When they had eaten it, the woodcutter said, "Now I'm going to tell you the whole story of Mushkil Gusha. Mushkil Gusha is the remover of all difficulties. Our difficulties have been removed through Mushkil Gusha, and we must always remember it." For nearly a week after that, the man carried on as usual. Now, the next Thursday came, and as is the way of men, the woodcutter forgot to repeat the tale of Mushkil Gusha. Late that evening, in the house of the woodcutter's neighbors, the fire had gone out. The neighbors had nothing with which to relight the fire, and they went to the house of the woodcutter. They said, "Neighbor, neighbor, please give us a light from those wonderful lamps of yours that we see shining through the window." "What lamps?" said the woodcutter. "Come outside," said the neighbors, "and see what we mean." So the woodcutter went outside, and then he saw, sure enough, all kinds of brilliant lights shining through the window from the inside. He went back to the house and saw that the light was streaming from the pile of pebbles that he had put in the corner, but the rays of light were cold, and it was not possible to use them to light a fire. So he went out to the neighbors and said, "Neighbors, I am sorry, but I have no fire." And he banged the door in their faces. They were annoyed and confused, and went back to their house, muttering, "They leave our story here." The woodcutter and his daughter quickly covered up the brilliant lights with every piece of cloth they could find, for fear that someone would see what a treasure they had. The next morning, when they uncovered the stones, they discovered that they were precious, luminous gems. They took the jewels, one by one, to neighboring towns, where they sold them for a huge price. The woodcutter now decided to build for himself and for his daughter a wonderful palace. They chose a site just opposite the castle of the king of their country. In a very short time, a marvelous building had come into being. Now, that particular king had a beautiful daughter, and one day, when she got up in the morning, she saw a sort of fairy tale castle just opposite her father's, and she was amazed. She asked her servants, "Who has built this castle? What right have these people to do such a thing so near to our home?" The servants went away and made inquiries, and they came back and told the story, as far as they could recollect it, to the princess. The princess called for the little daughter of the woodcutter, for she was angry with her. But when the two girls met and talked, they soon became fast friends. They started to meet every day, and went to swim and play in the stream that had been made for the princess by her father. A few days after they first met, the princess took off a beautiful and valuable necklace and hung it up on a tree just beside the stream. She forgot to take it down when she came out of the water, and when she got home, she thought it must have been lost. The princess thought a little, and then decided that the daughter of the woodcutter had stolen her necklace. She told her father, and he had the woodcutter arrested. He also confiscated the castle and took everything that the woodcutter had. The woodcutter was thrown into prison, and the daughter was put into an orphanage, as was the custom in that country. After a period of time, the woodcutter was taken from the dungeon and put in the public square, chained to a post, with a sign around his neck. On the sign was written, "This is what happens to those who steal from kings." At first, people gathered around him and jeered and threw things at him, but quite soon, as is the way of men, everyone became used to the sight of the man sitting there by his post, and took very little notice of him. Sometimes people threw him scraps of food or a few coins. Sometimes they did not. One day, he overheard somebody saying that it was Thursday afternoon, and he remembered how he had forgotten to mark the day. Quickly, he called out to a passerby, inviting him to buy a handful of dates from a nearby stall and come and sit with him for a moment or two. The woodcutter told the other man the story of Mushkil Gusha. "I think you must be mad," said the generous man. But he was a kindly person, who himself had many difficulties. When he arrived home after this incident, he found that all his problems had disappeared, and that made him start to think a great deal about Mushkil Gusha. But he leaves our story here. The very next morning, the princess went back to her bathing place. As she was about to go into the water, she saw what looked like her necklace down at the bottom of the stream. As she was going to dive in to try to get it back, she happened to sneeze. Her head went up, and she saw that what she had thought was the necklace was only its reflection in the water. It was hanging on the bough of the tree where she had left it such a long time before. Taking the necklace down, the princess ran excitedly to her father and told him what had happened. The king gave orders for the woodcutter to be released and given a public apology. The little girl was brought back from the orphanage, and everyone lived happily ever after. But it is because of Mushkil Gusha that his story, in whatever form, is remembered by somebody, somewhere in the world, day and night, wherever there are people, as his story had always been recited, so it will always continue to be told. The end. These are some of the incidents in the story of Mushkil Gusha. It is a very long tale, and it is never ended. It has many forms. Some of them are even not called the story of Mushkil Gusha at all, so people do not recognize it.